So I'm Nick Fowler. I'm an enterprise account executive for AirWatch. I've been in the EMEA region for about 2.5 years. Pretty much from day one when we moved into this region. Okay, so some of the slides you saw this morning, if you were at the session with Susan, my colleague, and I think the importance of this slide is that although there's lots and lots of great graphics here, this is really showing up the need for billions and billions of devices that have a real need to connect in and pull down data and get access to information, get down documentation, core applications, etc. And the metric there of 60% of customers have reported that they've got BYOD users bringing their devices into their organization. So many of the clients that we speak to say they don't have a BYOD or a BYOX mobility strategy. Well, however, everyone has a BYOX strategy, whether or not they're choosing to look at this or whether they're actually addressing this and embracing it. So it's really important to understand that organizations that we work with have this issue. So a lot of clients that I speak to and my colleague Susan speaks to, they say, okay, we don't have BYOD. We then tell them to go back and have a look at their email services and see how many unidentified devices are connecting to their services, and come back quite quickly and say, okay, we've got about 500 or 600, we don't know. So these are the things that AirWatch and our solution will address. So enabling the productivity. So in a traditional way, you will hand out devices to your organization. So typically in the past, you had devices, and everyone's moving into the iOS, Android, Microsoft world now. And enabling the productivity and usability of these devices is key. So traditionally, customers will give devices to their end users, so they'll have them as corporate assets. But then also, as part of this presentation, I'm going to go through some of the other use cases around multi-user, the BYOD, and other line of business type services. So it's important to understand that devices need to integrate with services. So these devices are useless in the hands of the users if they can't actually connect to anything and do anything with them. So it's kind of pointless in having them in the first place. So it's key to understand that in a mobility strategy, we need to make sure that we can help you secure this information, but make sure that it's accessible at all times to the end users. So securing it down, but also making sure that they can get access to it. It's important to make sure that they understand that the end users need access to email, maybe applications, or even document control. So the amount of clients we talk to right now, the kind of top 3 things are enterprise file sync and share, data privacy, and access to their applications and information, such as CRM, etc. All the devices that are connecting into your internal services will have corporately sensitive data on them. If you're not securing these devices down or putting security policies and compliance rules around them, it's not if there's going to be a data breach, it's when is there going to be a data breach? When is some of your information going to leak out, and what does that mean to your organization or even your industry? So you need to make sure that you've got a comprehensive solution that will address all of these needs. So making sure that you've got usability, you've got access to the information they need, and they can perhaps have a choice of device. Okay. So planning to extend this out to collaboration of different users, different use cases within an organization. So typically executives, management, knowledge workers, and the field workers like sales teams will have a corporate-owned device. There are customers that we do have who have addressed this with a complete BYOD, bring whatever device you want and we'll just secure it down. However, traditionally, within this graphic here, typically it would be a device which is owned by the organization. But then we need to consider what happens when we need to give access to people outside of this. So I would suggest that most of the organizations that are sitting in this room today will have some sort of contractors, they'll have some sort of supplier or vendor management, and they want to be able to extend some of this information flow or process flow out to those third parties. Now, those devices, you're not going to be able to mandate them that you're going to have, overlay the AirWatch device management on them because they're going to go, well, this is my device. I don't really care about your security. I just want I just want flow. I just want data. I want information. Let me consume it. Let me help you. So, how do we address this? This is kind of some of the important things that customers come to us and say, how are you doing this? What do we need to do to ensure that this kind of scenario is addressed for our business needs? Making sure that obviously the executives, they get what they need. They're usually slightly left field. However, we can address that with smart groups and all sorts of things. And then, the management and the knowledge workers, how are they collaborating? How are we making sure that they can actually communicate with each other than in a voice mode? So, with CRM packages, with sharing and editing documents, with, application information. So if we drill down into this, so extending this deployment, it's important to understand, and what we do with our customers is get the basics right. So this is understanding what you want from the get-go and making sure that the baseline is covered. And what I mean by that is, what is the use case for each and every area of your business? What do you need to deploy? Because every single use case will be different. Your sales teams will be different to your marketing teams will be different to your engineering teams. However, you need to ensure that everyone has a level of security either tighter or looser to make sure they have the right flow of info. So we address this by understanding if it's the core MDM. Is it just device management? Do we manage the whole device? Are we taking the whole thing and embracing the whole device and locking it down to a degree? Or are we approaching this from a container perspective? So the container perspective would be more in a BYOD. So someone is bringing their device to your organization. They may not want you to fully manage the device. However, you can just manage a small piece of the device. So you can put an application on there, and within there is your corporate line of business applications and information, so email, browsing, content, etc. But then we go that one step further to address the vendors, the third parties, the contractors, the customers, and that's having the standalone piece. So we can actually help you deploy individual applications which are secure on a device. Without securing any of the other device, your vendors, your contractors can install this, and then you can start sharing and collaborating data. May it be more than likely documents, so Word documents, marketing information, brochures, those kind of things. Or in some cases, even email. So you might even give a contractor, a third-party contractor, access to email temporarily. And then expanding out on this. So applications, or the advent of applications, is going to be exploding. So it's the next big thing. And I think Nick probably covered most of this morning. So applications really is going to be driving the market around devices. And app lifecycle management is really, really important, and a lot of the customers that we're working with at the moment really embrace this, but they need to understand that the entire ecosystem of the app management piece has to be managed from start to finish. And how do we do this? So who are we getting the device, who are we getting the applications from? Are we implementing these ourselves? Are we designing these ourselves? Do we have the skill sets? Or do we go to a third party or leverage somebody else to actually do that? And once we've decided on what applications, where we're going to get it from, how are we going to secure this down? How are we going to make sure that if I am putting these out onto the devices, may it be my own devices or devices that are walking through the door on a day-to-day basis, how am I securing these? How am I making sure that the right level of security is on there? So these are all lots and lots of challenges and business challenges that customers have that we can help address. So we can help build this confidence, build this understanding around development. We do this day in, day out. So it's all around making sure that you can get the right app, you can secure the right app, and then how are you going to distribute it? Are you going to distribute this to all of your endpoints, or are you going to do it to a subset, or even are you going to do it to a geographical subset? Or even in certain circumstances, are you going to distribute applications in a certain GPS location? So if a user's in a GPS location, an application's available. If they're not in that location, the application's not available. So it's all around understanding the use case, understanding exactly what needs to go on there. And once all of this has been ascertained, it's how are we going to wrap the whole management piece around there? So what are we doing to make sure that this is all being adhered to, the security's there, the apps are on there, they're usable, they're accessible, and the application flow is going. So with AirWatch, we can help dig right down into this and assist with the deeper elements to ensure that the configuration is correct, so making sure that the users have the right information at the right time. The right authentication. So we have a very broad spread of authentication, and we usually will leverage, you'll see a bit later on, the ecosystems that customers already have. So if you've already got Active Directory, if you've got Okta, Ping, VMware, Azure, et cetera, then we can authenticate the users based on whatever you already have. So we're already leveraging your investments you've already made. But we'll ensure that those are adhered to, and it's all around the usability. The user may have 5, 6, or maybe even more apps on their device. The last thing they want to do is keep having to type their credentials in. Okay, so they want to type it in once, and then it will go across all of them. So we can help with making sure that that's all maintained. And then also connectivity. So connectivity is really important. So everyone's worried about data plans. Everyone's worried about going over the data plans and consuming lots and lots of information. So we can help manage that piece as well. So especially on kind of sharing files and sharing information, we can make it so that it's Wi-Fi only. If you've got a document which is 10, 15, 20 meg, then you don't really want to be downloading that over your 3,000 users that you've just pushed that content out to over your data plan, because you're just going to consume your entire data plan in one day. So we make sure the connectivity is correct, obviously authentication to get through to there, it's secure. And then once all of this has been wrapped in, it's how do we pull reports off this stuff? So may it be analytics on application, who's using the applications, where are they using them, why are they using them, how are they using them? Documents, have they read the document that you've sent out to them? Have they seen the video and watched it for its entirety? If it's health and safety, important information, have they read all the pages? Haven't just flicked through it over 2 seconds, etc. So we can actually pull a whole heap of analytics around that down as well. All this is all well and good. However, you need to make sure, or we need to make sure, is there is a balance here. So Susan pertained to this earlier, around security and usability. Now, if you as an organization provide a device to your end user and you lock it right down so they can hardly do anything with it and they can only open 1 or 2 things, etc., typically what they'll do is they'll go out to the nearest shop and they'll buy their own device, and then they'll come along and then they'll just connect it up to your email services, etc. Okay, because if you lock it right down, they're not going to use it. So it's around making sure that they're using your assets that you've spent money on. Your security is balanced with the usability and enablement of the user. So they've got that device, they're happily using it, and complete balance of security. Okay, so the customers with the most successful mobility strategies that we've had to date really embrace and understand that EMM, or Enterprise Mobility Management, is the heartbeat of their communication and mobility strategy. So the most successful rollouts of EMM platforms have been where customers have placed EMM in the heart of their network. Because at the end of the day, you've got all of these things connected up. I mean, you'll recognize all of these, so directory services, VPNs, information flows, et cetera, And if you put EMM right in the middle there, we hook out to all of these services at all times. So some customers take all of this, some customers take some of it. However, it can cope with all of these. So if you've got a customer, so if we've got a client who is just doing email, then we'll just hook it into email. That's just basic MDM. If they're wanting to do a single sign-on or a VPN app on demand, then we've got all that in place as well. If they're looking for certificate authentication for Wi-Fi, apps, etc., we hook all that together. Now, this forms the complete ecosystem of a mobility strategy. So ensuring that all of these elements that you have in place that you want to leverage on your devices, put the EMM in the middle of the platform there. And like I said, the most successful rollouts, I'm going to talk about a client a bit later, they've done just this. They've embraced it in its entirety, put it in the middle there, and they see the importance of the communication tool they have. If this stuff doesn't work, your guys aren't talking to each other, they're not communicating with each other, and then that's obviously business limiting. So we work with customers on not only transforming business processes, but also kind of help them drive business innovation. I don't know any clients that I've spoken to who don't want to drive business innovation within their organization. So it's, lots of customers have gone out and bought the latest, shiniest devices, and they've deployed them out to their users, and they go, right, okay, what do we do now? Okay, so this is where we come in. This is where we can come and help. We can come and talk to them. Lots of customers will have a mobility strategy of some sort, and we can help kind of buff that out, meet it up, make sure that they're actually incorporating all the things that they need to consider. So we help with our customers. We're transforming these business processes, because if you do put these devices in there and you use users to get access to applications and file information, the processes will naturally change on their own. So we need to help you kind of devise on exactly which direction these are going. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about one of our customers. So they're a top pharmaceutical chemical life science company. They are one of our clients that will come along to Mobile World Congress and they'll do keynote speeches. They really, really work with us well. They're very big advocates of AirWatch and they've embraced everything that we do. And they've had a very, very successful implementation of our EMM platform. It's a shame I can't get them to come along today. However, just some metrics here. So they've got 40,000 employees in 66 countries. So therein lies a challenge immediately. I mean, you've got regulatory challenges, you've got different organisations such as the German Working Council, the French CNIL for privacy, etc., etc. So a whole host of challenges will then sort of arise when you start looking at a global rollout. But these guys actually did it all in one hit. So they actually said, right, well, you know, we embrace these challenges. What do you understand about these AirWatch? How can you help us do this? Said, right, well, we've got other clients who have done this, and this. You need to get in, you know, we'll put you in touch with the right people. We'll build the necessary strategy, and then we'll help you deliver this. And this is exactly what they did. So they've got 15,000 devices which they've deployed at the moment, and that is a mix of corporate owned as well as BYOD. I should be going into a little bit more detail in a second. But as you can see there, they just wanted to make their people's lives easier. They wanted to give them a nice, easy transition from the solution they had before to a more unified approach. They just wanted to make sure that, their employees were happy, and if their employees were happy, then they were communicating with their customers, selling more stuff, and that's the really important thing. So these were some of the key considerations, but however, these kind of relate to a lot of customers that we talk to around a mobility solution. So these are kind of like the bedrock areas. So, you know, BYOD, however everyone thinks of BYOD as not being around, it is around, and they understood that. So they said, we've got these devices, we've got these people, but we do know that we've got a wider audience of people that are going to be bringing these devices in. So they were addressing that as part of the solution. Data privacy and compliance, again, really, really key. One of the top things that we talk to our clients about at the moment, so DPA and privacy. You know, making sure that the end users are happy that you're not tracking them or you're not checking on their applications, their private information, etc., etc. So we've got some really, really neat parts of our solution which will address that. And like I said before, country-specific legal requirements. So this is not only around the privacy laws, but also around certain areas of trade unions and all those kind of things as well. So we work day to day on this stuff, so we can help. Application management, user group management. So we've got a fully multi-tenanted environment, which means that you can have, out of all of these countries that they deploy these out in, you can have a specific group set or subset for each country. And each country administrator, when they log into the single console, will only see their country. Okay, so this was really, really important to them. So making sure that the right user groups were seeing the right information on the administration console when they were managing these devices. So not only making sure the devices were managed, but the people who were managing them were only seeing the right information. Global policy settings. So as it's multi-tenanted at the very top of this organization, they wanted to make sure that they had a specific password length. They wanted to make sure they had a specific Wi-Fi password, etc. So these are all set at the very top. And this is really important to the customer because they wanted to make sure that anybody below them, say in France or Spain or Australia or whatever, weren't going to change those password or security policies. So these were set at the top, locked out, okay? Those will inherit right the way through, and everyone will get exactly the same policy as a global entity. They can make those stronger, they just can't make them any weaker. And integration with their existing document management solution. So they had a whole plethora of different things. They had SharePoint, they had a whole bunch of different WebDAV and CMS type back-end document repositories. But not only that, they had some public ones as well. So they were using Google Drive, they were using OneDrive, they had a whole load of stuff. And how did they pull all that together? So our solution will do that. So you can actually have whatever they were allowed to get to in our secure containerization piece. So this was the mobility sort of strategy and solution that we put together. I mean, this isn't an exhaustive list. This is, you know, the baseline piece to make sure we have to get the fundamentals right, and then after that, you can push it out to the wider piece. So this is a quote from them. So they wanted to introduce the agile way of becoming more effective. So they really embraced the fact that mobility and cloud computing is the way forward within the industry. A lot of their other internal services, which are not related to AirWatch, are all moving out into the cloud world. So they had a whole load of legacy tin and et cetera, which they're all moving out. Some of our colleagues at VMware are assisting to do that. But the organization itself, their vision was to just move everything out, let it all just work in a managed way in a cloud scenario. And they're really, really pushing this aggressively. They understood that mobility touched pretty much every part of their organization. They had thousands of people roaming around, and they had all these different devices, et cetera, et cetera. So they needed to make sure they could put all this together. They understood that. And so what they did is they boiled down the ownership models. So we've got several other ones here, but with this pharmaceutical organization, they decided to go with the corporate-owned and all these devices that they knew were walking through their office doors every single day, day in, day out. And they needed to understand what the baseline applications were going to be put on the solution itself. So emails are given, but then applications was a really interesting area for them, and also content. So we're going to drill down into a bit of that. So the application piece was enormous. It got really out of control, and this does tend to happen with some of our clients, where you've got lots of developers tinkering with lots of different things, and you get a techie that decides to develop a GUI to get access to one CRM, and then someone else in another office is doing the same, etc. So they actually had over 400 internal applications. So we managed to help them boil that down to 150. They're increasing again now. However, we have boiled that down. So how do you manage 150 internal applications across 40,000 users? Okay, so this is a real challenge to them. And one of the areas that was really important to them was to make sure that every employee that they have working on their solution or their devices can have whatever application has been approved, whatever application they need, and at any time they want. If they don't see the application that they want, they have a really easy interface just to go, right, okay, we want this app. Can we request this? Can we send this in? And that will then go to the administrators, and then they'll review and then add that to the App Store. So they created their own custom App Store to manage all these pieces. So this was a really, really, really big piece of work that we did with them. The secure tunneling with the mobile access gateway, which is showing up there, was key to them, because they did have a need to add additional security, single sign-on, and wrap the applications. However, they didn't have the ability at the time to do that. So an on-demand VPN was important to them. They had already leveraged VPN services, and the devices that they had were quite happy to do this. So ensuring that when a user clicks on an app on the device, it's going through to the right place, it's pulling the right information in a secure way. And then the content piece. So AirWatch have a full enterprise file sync and share solution, which is called our Secure Content Locker. With this customer, they had a whole host of different kind of public document sharing applications, which the end users had decided to find themselves because the corporate hadn't delivered one to them. So we put in front of them our Secure Content Locker, which fitted their needs really, really well. So irrespective of what device they have the ability to completely secure down all the document access to their SharePoints, their different WebDAV document repositories. But not only that, we respect all the rules and regulations and policies they've already leveraged and put around that. So they've got Active Directory in this case, and they've already spent a whole load of time for their hundreds of thousands of documents they've already got in place. Last thing they want to do is have to go through all those again to put it into a new app that AirWatch is going to give them. So we just respect all of those. So anything that's confidential is not allowed to be emailed. It's not allowed to be edited. We even provide on certain documents a watermarking which gets drawn through from the device. So if a user pulls down a company confidential piece of information which is super secure and shouldn't leave the organization, they've got their name written across it. They can read it, but if they get another device and take a picture of it, again, the data leakage will be known where it's gone from. We can't stop them getting a pencil or a pen and writing it down. However, electronically, you've done all the due diligence to make sure that that document hasn't left the building. So this was, some months worth of work with them. However, very, very simple solution to be able to deploy out onto all of their devices, ensuring that when a user wants to edit something or collaborate internally with their own teams, then they can do that. if they wanted to actually collaborate out with a third party, they could also do that based on the policies and the level of management that they have. So what's next for this organisation? So, I mean, they've taken pretty much the entire AirWatch suite. They've taken all the consultancy from us. They've really embraced the solution. They've put it into the kind of lifeblood of their organisation, and you know, they really rely on it. They trust us, and all things are good. But the next thing they're looking at is application wrapping, a bit more around the SDK or software development kit. So this is more around the kind of next generation of applications they're looking to put out there. However, the marketplace is slightly changing in the app world, and some of the app wrapping piece is going to be kind of legacy in the future. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a sec. Okay, so we kind of get the idea of we've got these devices, they're out there, they've got to be managed, they've got to be secured. We've got some, you know, really good clients who have embraced all of this. So what about you? So what are the best practices for you? So no two organizations are the same, as Susan said this morning. It's very difficult for us to say, here's a recipe for you for your enterprise mobility management. Go and put that in and it'll be all good, okay? So we need to kind of work with you. Typically, we'll engage with you and your teams. Sometimes, depending on the size of your organization and what you're looking to do, if you're looking at BYOD, sometimes we need to bring in human resources. You might think, well, that's a bit strange for mobile devices. However, we need to make sure that if we're managing your non-corporate devices, your employees are happy with it. We need to make sure that, you know, there's no liability around the information that you have and what you do to the devices. And in some cases, we'll have to even bring in some of the legal teams, specifically around privacy and data protection, or DPA. So what some of the best practices that we talk about with our customers? So like I said before, the fundamentals are making sure that how you start the mobility strategy is key to how you move forward. So what are the devices you're using? How do you want to manage them? And is it fully managed or is it containerized? So are you doing the full suite of getting right under the bonnet and under the skin of the device, managing all of it, you're pushing all the profiles, the settings, the policies, you have complete control, you can lock and wipe, you can move, you can do all these sorts of things? Or are you going to have a workspace? So that, like I said before, the workspace is just an application that sits on the device, completely containerized away from the rest of the device, and you as an organization manage that piece only. And what that means is you're not going to be able to push settings to the device, you're not going to be able to do any of that stuff. However, your data is secure. Your email data, your content data, your applications, etc., all within there. And that's still all wrapped in with single sign-on, it's still all wrapped in with compliance rules, is it jailbroken, is it rooted, all those kind of things. However, it's a trade-off. How do you want to do this? So the workspace is more around bring your own device, and the full management of the device is going to be more around the corporate-owned devices. And once you kind of got that kind of fundamental piece, is what do you actually want to have on there? Email, pretty much a given for most, like I said. But content, browsing, applications. So we have our own browser, so you can kind of lock out Safari browsers or Google browsers or Firefox or whatever, and you can have a fully managed browser. Now, we have some customers who have multiple use cases, and one of the really good use cases for our secure browser is if you have events such as today, you can actually give an iPad or an Android device to one of your staff that man the stand, and you can lock the browser out to your website. So that device can only go to that website and that website only. Or you can wildcard an intranet or whatever it may be. So there's a whole host of different kind of wider use cases for individual applications within our suite. And then, what devices do you want to manage? So I would suggest that most of you here have already got devices out in the field. If you're looking at a mobility strategy to switch, then come and talk to us. It's kind of irrelevant which devices you take. We don't mind. We're completely agnostic to it. However, there are some nuances within the OEMs and the OSs. So take our advice if you want to come and talk to us. But we will support all the endpoints that you see on here. So it's kind of irrelevant whether it's a mobile device, if it's a tablet, if it's a laptop, if it's the legacy rugged. So we've got tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Windows CE legacy devices still out there in the field which we're managing. AirWatch bought the Motorola MSP platform some time ago, and so we've still got a whole host of those out, delivering parcels, etc., etc. But then one of the key concerns which we talk to a lot of our clients, specifically CIOs at the moment, and on the table is the peripherals piece. So what happens when someone brings an Apple Watch into the organization? What happens if they bring Google Glasses or some of these other things which are not kind of deemed as mobile phones? They kind of are, but they don't look like mobile phones, but they're still communication tools. So how do we ensure that these things walking through the doors aren't going to be collecting data and walking out the door with it? So, and we manage these things. This is our kind of bread and butter. We do all of this stuff. So it's kind of irrelevant to what device you have, but we can help you, with a decision if you decide to choose on one. And managing your OS as well. So you'll have a preference for OSs. If you already have OSs, a specific OS out there, then let us help you manage that. We've even got the BlackBerry piece in there as well, some of the legacy BlackBerries. But we can help you understand some of the nuances around the different OS platforms, some of the limitations that you might find. Some of you already experienced some of those, judging by some of the conversations that I've had today. But we can help alleviate those. So we will leverage all of the capabilities and all the connectivity APIs for all of the OSs that you see on the screen here. But not only that, we will also overlay the AirWatch platform tools as well. So our secure content locker, our secure browser, our secure email containers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, there is an expansion to this, not just managing the OSs, but also helping you manage the applications. And every use case. So one of the ones on here, so we've talked about corporate, we've talked about BYOD, but then there's the shared element here, which is very much under-talked about. Now, the shared element is large in the NHS, it's large in education, and what this is where you have multiple users using a single device, okay? So if we look at the education side of things, so if you imagine you've got a classroom of school children, you have a stack of tablet devices, they'll come into the class, they'll pick a device up, they'll switch it on, they put their name in, and then that becomes their device for their class. So it might be a 6-year-old and they get lots of games and things on there. Or it might be a 16-year-old who's doing their GCSEs. So when they put their name in, it then enrolls them to their email, their applications, their information. If it's an 18-year-old, it might be their dissertation information, it might be their file set, sync and share information. So it's all around a kind of a check-in, check-out. So I'm deploying this currently on a train line, a train company. So they've got 5 or 6 different train operating companies, and the drivers are going to have these, and they're going to be sharing them amongst themselves. So they can't afford to give each driver a tablet, so they'll come into the office at the beginning of their shift, they'll pick a tablet up, they put in their credentials, it becomes theirs. So it's their shift information, their relevant information, it's theirs. It's as if they've been given that device as their own. When they finish their shift, they check it back out, they put it back on the stack, ready for somebody else. So it can be used by multiple users across multiple use cases. It can go from management to salesperson to wherever. So this is, it's, like I said, very big in the NHS, very big in education, construction as well. So if there's any of you in construction industry here, then construction are widely using this and looking at it. But I think to wrap this whole piece up is we will give you the ability to manage any device, anywhere, anytime. We can help you structure your requirements, your use cases, and even understand where some of your users fit. So like I said, lots of customers we speak to think they have a mobility strategy, they think they understand these use cases, run them by us. We can then say, okay, well, I think that might be better doing this, or we might be better doing that. Take our advice, let us help you. This is what we do. Okay, so moving on to the AirWatch Marketplace. So obviously I've talked about the services that we can do from an AirWatch perspective, but in a lot of cases, the integration into your internal services have to have some sort of connectivity part. So we have our AirWatch Marketplace. So this is just a subset of our suppliers where we've opened up the AirWatch management systems for these organizations to be able to leverage APIs and management of the AirWatch capabilities. So this is anything from the directory services, so simple stuff, single sign-on, identity management, etc. Certificates, emails, kind of a given, like I said. But then if you look at content filtering, so lots of customers have already leveraged web filtering. So irrelevant if you've got proxy server internally or whether you've got something out in the cloud. We've got organizations that we've already leveraged. So you've purchased these services, so we just hook straight into it. We don't want to have to sell you something else which will do exactly the same thing. We'll just leverage the ones that you've already got. Okay, so I've got a nice use case which I was discussing earlier for Aruba. So Aruba have got the ClearPass management piece. I'm just rolling out 20,000 licenses for a customer who's got 100% BYOD. So their users walk into the door in the morning. They get forced to enroll their device into a containerized approached management service. And then that's all managed on the Aruba ClearPass service. So the end user's already got their ClearPass management suite. They don't want to have an AirWatch management suite and a ClearPass management suite. They want one. So we've hooked that in. So it sits in the background, but they just use one to manage all of their devices. It gives them a really neat, really user-friendly, easy, secure way of enforcing security onto users connecting into their network and pulling down applications, pulling down emails, etc. And the content repositories. So we've pretty much got 99% of the content repositories kind of sewn up, so we can give access to our customers to all of the public ones, all of their internal ones, to give the ability to do the syncing and sharing of documentation. If customers out there say to us, well, if they've got one they've self-developed or they've got something kind of in the left field, then we'll develop for it. I had a customer in the legal sector who had something very specific to legals, and I had it developed, and it was about a month or two, and then we integrated that as well. Now they're quite happily using that as their full document repository. We don't want to have to force customers to go, well, we don't support that, you're going to have to take that. It's expensive stuff. So we just leverage all of that. If not, then we'll just develop it so that it works. And then we've got the application ecosystem. So this is about, well, there's one of the things, it's not actually showing on this slide, but this is something that we announced at Mobile World Congress this last month. So we've just, as AirWatch, launched something called the ACE directive, so this application configuration for enterprise. So this is where AirWatch is actually driving innovation for the ISVs, so as we've got in here, Salesforce, Oracle, Box, etc., where I don't know how many of you in the room have tried mobility management in the past or pushed public applications out to devices or managed any devices. But if you've got an internal application that you've developed, you can push that to a device, you can configure it in its entirety, you can put the username and password automatically in there. But if you're pushing public applications, such as Salesforce One or the Oracle application or Box or whatever, you can push those apps out, but you cannot configure the credentials in those, which is kind of annoying for the customer, for the end user, because they use their device, they're quite happily using all the other applications on there, but then when they open up Salesforce, they open up Oracle or whatever, they then have to put their credentials in. So AirWatch are driving the marketplace for a lot of these ISVs to say, okay, give EMM platforms the ability to be able to configure these. So this is going to be a complete step change within the market, because typically public apps, you cannot touch them, you can't do anything with them, you just push them out. But what it does is it helps the ISV so they don't have to have a specific application per EMM. So they don't have to have a Salesforce for AirWatch, a Salesforce for EMM X, a Salesforce for EMM Y. So they don't have to have 5 or 6 or 7 or even more iterations of their app. So there's some really, really good work being done on here, and this is where we're going to be moving away from the whole app wrapping and SDK and having to do all those additional features and functions and around the application deployment. So you can have an out-of-the-box deployment, fully configured, fully integrated, even on public applications. And so, just to expand on that, so at the moment, like I said, customers, if they are looking to secure or do auto-configuration of applications on devices, then they have to choose kind of one of the three. So is it just basic MDM policies pushing out to the applications? Are we doing a full SDK implementation, so building it from the ground up? Or are we taking the applications they've already used and developed and then just wrapping some extra security around those? So it's we have to take different development approaches depending on how mature the customer is with their applications, how far down the line they are with deploying those and pushing those out and securing them down as well. And then we have the integration with the app tools as well. So customers come to us typically if we're working with them on their normal EMM side and they're saying, okay, we're going out into the application world. So we've got relationships with this is a subset of them, but we've got some customers who are looking for us to say, right, well, we've got these devices, we've got these applications, we've got these devices. How do we secure these apps? So we work with lots of third parties. I mean, Feed Henry's typically one of them, an app accelerator as well, where we can take customers' apps they've already developed, and they can drop them into these engines, and they get all wrapped up quite nicely with the AirWatch piece, and then they get dropped out the other end, and then we can deploy those. So we can work with customers around strategy, around the security. And then we've got the analytics piece as well here. So we've got, if we take criticism, for example, I mean, these really are global grade analytics companies. So they'll work typically with the likes of eBay or Amazon, and imagine how many devices have got the eBay application installed on it in a public world. So they can actually pull analytics of when it crashed, where it crashed, what device it was, what kind of software it was running, all those things. So it's unique to the device, but there's no private information of the user. But they can then pull that back and give that to eBay or Amazon or another and go, right, you had 10,000 crashes this afternoon. It was on iOS 7.3, blah, blah, blah. So they can then adapt that. They can do an update and then they push it out. You'll be using smartphones. You get updates pushed out periodically on the devices. That's typically because someone like Criticism has been looking at it and picking up the bugs and the issues, and then they'll be pushing that out. So we're working very closely hand in hand with a lot of these ISVs, the analytics guys, the server guys, the application guys. So, you know, AirWatch, it really is pushing the next stage around applications. So we've got this whole piece, which I could probably stand up here for about 2 hours and talk about. I'm not going to. But we can come and have a chat with me later on, and we can go into it into more detail. So kind of just to summarize, we can provide all of the things that we've spoken about today. So the full multi-tenancy, the management, the application controls, the process-driven business innovation, helping you understand your use cases, helping you understand exactly what you need to deploy as a mobility strategy, making sure that you're on the right track. If you're already going down that path, then we can help you. We can understand. We can, you know, move you into a better position if you've been struggling with it. I've had a few people talk to me today, so they've had a foray into this, and we've been struggling with X, Y, and Z. So come and talk to us. I mean, this is what we do. This is how we work. So, unless there's anything else, is any questions about today? Is any? I'll open it up to the floor. Don't be shy. Nick, who's getting a microphone?
Just curious, very good presentation. With regards to the parent now, VMware, so where are your customers looking to do the complementary elements with the VMware capabilities and AirWatch? Where are they gravitating to?
Sure. From
the AirWatch side?
Sure, absolutely. So, like I said, we were acquired by VMware a year ago, and it's been a slow process of integrating the two organizations. So we've done a whole lot of the internal stuff and the HR pieces, but now in the background we've actually started the technology piece as well. So VMware, we actually got bought by the end user computing arm, because we fitted really nicely in the last kind of jigsaw puzzle piece for mobility. They had all the desktop, laptop, everything all sewn up, all the VDI, all the virtual services and the tin, etc., but they didn't have the mobility piece. So we slotted nicely into there to complete their solution. So you'll start seeing in the market our integration with the VMware Socialcast. So it's like the collaboration piece for businesses, so like Facebook for business. And then also the Horizon 6 suite as well. So if any of you are VMware customers or using Horizon 6, then Susan's got my iPad, but I can show you. I'll stand there, running a Horizon 6 demonstration. So accessing servers, I've got some in Palo Alto, and I can just log into a Windows R2 server, or even other applications. So it looks a bit weird, Windows running on an iOS device. However, they're the first forays into that, because that fits nicely into the end user computing piece. However, it's going to expand further out. So, I mean, we're going to be working, we already are working on the QNX platform, so it's going to be expanding out into vehicles and the kind of Internet of Things and all the other strategies that VMware have as well, and the visions they have in the future. So Socialcast and Horizon 6 will be the first ones you see.